Now, from Atlanta News First, the issues that matter to you. This is On the Record.
I'll be resigning from office with my last day being January 5th, 2026.
It's Sunday. A stunning turn of events. Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene resigning from the U.S. House of Representatives. I'm Rick Fulbaugh.
And I'm Doug Reardon. It comes as her public feud with President Donald Trump turns ugly. The president has spent the past week calling his once close ally a traitor and promising to endorse a challenger against her in next year's midterms. The Rome Republican rose to prominence as one of President Trump's most loyal followers, but has been critical of his agenda and the GOP as a whole over the past few months.
One after another, starting back in June when Greene spoke out against an artificial intelligence measure written into the president's so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Then in July, Greene broke from her party again, becoming the first Republican lawmaker to label the war in Gaza a genocide. In August, Greene was quoted saying she believed the Republican Party had lost touch with its base. She has been among the loudest voices calling for the release of the Epstein files, the documents surrounding the investigation into one of President Trump's former friends, Jeffrey Epstein. The convicted sex offender died by suicide while in jail awaiting trial. A bill forcing the files release was signed just days ago. And during the recent government shutdown, Greene sided with Democrats, calling on Republicans to go along with Democrats and extend Obamacare subsidies.
In a lengthy video posted to social media, Greene said she was stepping down to avoid what would have been a nasty primary battle, given that President Trump has encouraged Republicans to run against her.
I love my family way too much, and I do not want my sweet district to have to endure a hurtful and hateful primary against me by the president that we all fought for. I refuse to be a battered wife, hoping it all goes away and gets better.
And President Trump responded to the news saying that Congresswoman Greene, quote, went bad. He also thanked her for her service and told reporters he believed Greene wouldn't have survived a primary election without his support.
Once I left her, she resigned because she would never have survived a primary. But I think she's a nice person.
And our panel joins us now, both very nice people. Democratic State Senator Sonia Halpern, who represents Georgia's 39th district in the state Senate. Also Heath Garrett is a Republican political strategist and attorney. Thank you both for joining us, for going on the record. Heath, I've got to start with you as a Republican. When you got this news and you heard about it, what did you think?
Well, it's like a bombshell going off after an earthquake. I mean, this is big drama. You have two huge personalities. We've been watching it unfold. We weren't sure where it was headed. I think she shocked the world by resigning as quickly and making the kind of Gettysburg-like speech. It's almost like she's divorcing herself not only from Donald Trump, but also staging up some kind of opportunity in the future to either try to take part of the MAGA constituency with her, but she also could have set up an independent run for president. I mean, her language and the issues that she chose really leave us guessing as to what she can do.
Senator Halpern, as you watch this from the other side of the political aisle, what do you think?
So I think that she's always been actually a very fascinating political personality. And I find it very ironic that the person who built a national brand on political theater and confrontation is now saying that the reason why she stepped down is because political theater does not allow you to actually solve problems. But it's interesting, too, because, I mean, obviously her feud with Donald Trump, the president, mattered. But also there is a real acknowledgement in the remarks that she made last night that, that she bumped into that problem of trying to actually solve problems through the legislative process, which is slow and requires negotiation. And the fact that she wasn't able to do that and has said that, I think really does just remind us how governing is different than performing, and how solving problems through the legislative process is where we need to be focused.
And Heath, does this represent something more worrying in the MAGA base? Because what we see with politicians may bleed into a little bit of a feud with voters as well. Is that the way you see it?
No, that's right. We've said it before, a house divided against itself cannot stand. It does look like there's fracturing within the MAGA base of the Republican Party. That has huge implications, not only for Georgia in 2026, but as she mentioned in her own remarks, she's already saying she believes we're going to lose the House of Representatives, and she believes she's the solution to that, not the President of the United States, that he's a real drag. And so it's that division that really should worry all of us as Republicans. And I think we as Republicans have a reckoning. How do we win back independent voters? And she's actually using some language that would help Republicans do that.
Senator Halpern, as we look ahead, a potential Senate run for her, governor run, presidential run, as a Democrat, how do you size it up, and what do you think, where do you think she is most a threat to Democrats?
I don't necessarily see her as a threat to Democrats. I actually think that were she to get into the U.S. Senate race, were she to get in the governor's race, I think that that could be really helpful for the Democratic Party here in Georgia.
You don't see her being able to win a statewide?
No, because I don't think that she'd be able to build the kind of coalition that she would need to build in order to get enough of the votes, right? She can maybe get your hardcore MAGA folks, but she'd also need to get kind of your everyday Republicans. She'd have to get independents. And then maybe she'd need a few Democrats on top of that that she can impress with kind of the new way that she's speaking. And I don't see her being able to hold onto that coalition. This is really new. This kind of language and phrasing that she's using is new. We're not used to it. And I think that that it's hard to understand yet how sincere she is, or if this really is a play for her to get to whatever that next level is that she wants.
Is there an opportunity for Democrats? We know the 14th district is super red, so maybe not, but is that the way you're looking at it?
I don't know. So I think that we always like to play in every district. So I think that for sure you should see a Democrat run in that district. It is very red. I mean, those maps were drawn in such a way that is highly partisan to the Republican side. But I do think that, you know, it could be a bellwether perhaps on what may come in 2026, even if we just improve on our numbers in the special election.
Congresswoman Greene's will leave office in just over a month. Her resignation will take effect on January 5th. No temporary appointments to the seat are allowed. The seat will remain vacant until it's filled by a special election. All right, political science professor and Atlanta News First political analyst Dr. Ben Taylor joins us now on the record. And Ben, we know that Marjorie Taylor Greene is extremely popular in that very red 14th district. Where does this leave her constituents? Where does this leave voters now that there's this vacancy?
She is exceptionally popular, which is why it's interesting that she wanted to avoid a contested primary. I think she was probably very well situated to make it through that, but we'll take her at her word for her reasons. But what this does now is it leaves a very wide open field. And what I think you can expect to see is a number of state legislators get in. Maybe there are some county elected officials who think that they might want to get in the race. But in the end, I think as we've indicated already, it's a very Republican conservative district. So there may be a few Democratic candidates, but this is mainly about the Republicans who are going to get in.
Right. We know there are slim margins in Congress already. We saw that play out with the recent shutdown battle. Does this weaken the ability of President Trump to implement his agenda through the House because she was one of his most fervent voices there?
I think so. And I think when you're dealing with very thin margins in the legislative chamber like the Republicans are in the House, you need every vote you can get because you never know when somebody's going to get sick. You never know when someone's going to have a long-term illness or even just pass away.
Or resign.
Or resign, exactly. And so all of these things matter, particularly when you have tight margins. So it could make life more difficult.
What do you think is next for her?
Her statements indicate that she may have larger political plans, but she's been making the rounds on television of late and doing some media opportunities that really were not in her sort of capacity before, I think. And so maybe that's allowed her. But honestly, in my opinion, she really has a lot of opportunities. The problem for her, I think, though, is that when you begin to burn political bridges, you make any political opportunities much harder for the future. And so that's something she would want to be careful of.
Dr. Ben Taylor, we appreciate it. Coming up next here on Atlanta News First, one of the city's top officials here in Atlanta joins us on the record 1 month before he leaves his post at City Hall.
Metro Atlanta voters are heading back to the ballot box. Early voting is underway right now ahead of the December 2nd municipal runoff elections. Voters in Sandy Springs are deciding whether they want to give their mayor a 4th term or bring in a fresh face. Dante Carter is challenging incumbent Mayor Rusty Paul. This is a rematch from 4 years ago when Paul defeated Carter back in 2021. Meantime, people living in South Fulton will have a new mayor next year. Voters rejected embattled incumbent Mayor Khalid Kobi Kamau during the November 4th election. His term was tainted by infighting and accusations he misused taxpayer dollars. 9 people ran for his seat at City Hall, but no one received a majority of the vote. District 2 Councilwoman Carmelita Gums and former South Fulton Councilman Dr. Mark Baker both believe they have what it takes to get the young city back on track. Early voting is happening right now in those runoffs and runs through Wednesday, November 26th, and then again Election Day is December 2nd.
Well, back here in Atlanta, we are preparing to say goodbye to one of the city's top officials. City Council President Doug Shipman received the Spirit of Atlanta Award last week. Shipman has spent the past 4 years leading Atlanta's legislative body. He's credited with redefining the relationship between the council president and the mayor. He announced early this year he would not be seeking another term. Last week, I sat down with Shipman on the record to talk about his hopes for the future for Atlanta as he leaves office. Where are you leaving Atlanta, and do you think we're going in the right direction?
So when the election happened in 2021, people wanted basic services to be improved. People wanted public safety to be improved. People wanted the tone of how the mayor and the city council president and the city council worked to be more collaborative. And Buckhead City was a big question. So I think if you look at where we are now, public safety numbers are much better than they were, and I think people feel better about public safety. We're able to retain more fire and police officers. We're able to recruit better. City services have improved. You can see that around the city. You can see it in parks. You can see it on curbs. We have seen Buckhead City be defeated, which has kept the city together. And we have seen the collaboration and the spirit and the tone of relationships at City Hall.
Do you have, if you could point and put your finger on it, something that you can look to as an accomplishment that you've achieved here in the last 4 years that kind of stands above the rest?
I think I've probably spent the most time on trying to make sure that MARTA is effective, that MARTA dollars that the city has put into the system are coming out in projects and services. It's not something I thought that I would spend a lot of time on, but I do think that we have gotten better responsiveness from MARTA. I think we focused on the right issues. I think we've uncovered some deficiencies, and I am hopeful that going forward we're going to have a better relationship between MARTA and the city, but we're also just going to have better outcomes when it comes to our transit.
You mentioned that one of your big goals was getting collaboration between kind of the mayor's office, the president, and the city council. Yeah. Do you think there was maybe an overcorrection there? Because we have a very tight-knit group of councilors who work well with you, who work well with the mayor, and that's great. But do you worry that when you leave, there won't be that diversity of thought, that kind of the pressure builds the diamond scenario?
You know, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I can reflect on the ways that we've been able to make it happen. I have tried to advocate for a lot of things publicly and even more things privately with fellow council members and with the mayor. But I also have inserted myself as president into committee meetings. I've asked questions. I've asked for information. I hope that both of those sides of the equation are ones that my fellow council members take forward, that they do have regular standing ways in which they communicate with the city council president and the mayor, but that they also raise very tough questions, that they also ask for information, that they use the committee meetings and the overall way in which a council can move to actually be a source of agitation in a positive way.
Something else that kind of dominated your tenure, I will say, and certainly the city councils over the last 4 years, was the Public Safety Training Center. Very controversial, but a lot of folks felt very necessary and important to have it. How do you feel about it now that the ribbon has been cut, the dust has settled a little bit, and you mentioned public safety a couple times already? Are we seeing this help?
So the real aspect of the public training safety facility that was supposed to improve Atlanta was that it was supposed to lead to better training, and it was supposed to lead to better recruitment and better retention of our officers for both police and fire. We have seen going from every other month having a new class of recruits to every month of recruits at the Police Training Academy. That means we're able to recruit them, means we're able to train them faster because of that facility. We have seen them actually have better scores on their tests and on their sort of recertification. So we are seeing better training. And you have seen the overall crime statistics go down. So I think the basic thesis of having the training facility is showing itself to be the case.
You know, Atlanta's held a lot of big events over the years. We have the World Cup games coming up in 2026. Are we ready for them?
So I think we are going to be ready for them. I think you're seeing a lot of investments right now in paving and infrastructure investments. Obviously, MARTA knows that they have a lot to deliver when it comes to the World Cup. We have a lot of security concerns. There's long been planning with state and federal partners around the security. I hope that we are able to take advantage of it from a small business, cultural asset, visitation, seeing the rest of the city point of view.
Marcy Overstreet is going to be taking over your position. What's your advice to her as you leave this job?
The city council president is one that can convene people in very, very unique ways because they don't vote and because they have access to everything, but they don't have the power to vote. They don't have the power to introduce legislation. And so that convening capacity is really unique. And my advice is just use it in all the ways that you can creatively, because it can really be helpful to everyone who's trying to do good.
Well, Council President Shipman, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
And you can listen to my full interview with Atlanta City Council President Doug Shipman right now. Just subscribe to the On the Record podcast from Atlanta News First.
Coming up, Georgia lawmakers are now a step closer to deciding whether or not to scrap the state's income tax. What it could mean for your wallet next on The Record.
On the record right now, a Georgia congressman is now calling for an immigration crackdown.
Buddy Carter wants more federal immigration agents in Atlanta. The Republican who represents Southeast Georgia and is running for the U.S. Senate wrote a letter to the Department of Homeland Security saying in part, quote, rising levels of illegal immigrants and increasing threats to public safety in Georgia highlight the urgent need for an enhanced ICE presence in Atlanta. And to support his case, Carter pointed to an October arrest in Clayton County of a man in the country illegally from Mexico with active warrants for murder and aggravated assault.
And candidates in the race for Georgia governor are outlining new policy platforms.
It's a very crowded field of about a dozen people right now, but candidates are hoping these initiatives could help them secure your vote, including Democrat Jason Estevez, who is promising access to child care for all Georgia parents. If elected, the former educator says that he would use existing Georgia lottery reserves to expand pre-K to all Georgia 3- and 4-year-olds by 2030. Estevez also says he wants universal child care access in Georgia, regardless of income or zip code, by 2035.
And current Republican Secretary of State and candidate for Governor Brad Raffensperger is revealing more about his tax relief plan. If implemented, the total property taxes paid by Georgia homeowners would never increase more than inflation. The tax relief package would also eliminate non-education and non-public safety related property taxes for seniors. When I talked to him back in September, Secretary Raffensperger told me that protecting seniors is a priority for him.
I think we need to just cap it right now, no more increases, because if you look at what happens, they keep on assessing up and they're not doing rollbacks. But really, protecting our seniors should be job one, and it will be mine as your next governor.
One of the cornerstones of Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones's campaign for governor was back on the agenda last week at the state capitol. Georgia lawmakers are a step closer to deciding whether our state should eliminate its income tax. Last week, a special study committee held its final meeting before the legislative session begins in January. Right now, income taxes bring in about $20 billion. That's more than half of Georgia's general fund. A state budget and policy institute report says that if Georgia eliminated the income tax, lawmakers would need to implement a 12% sales tax. With local taxes included, the average sales tax rate across the state would increase to 15.4%. Senator Halpin, you are a former colleague of Jason Estevez. What do you think of these education proposals, these child care proposals that he's put out? What do you think of this campaign that he's running?
So I have known Jason for a long time, even before he ran for state senate, and of course we've served together. One thing I will say about him is that he does his homework and that he is very focused on policy. And childcare and education, I think, are two places where the state really does need some change and some leadership. Our QBE formula is 40 years old. There are people every day who are telling us that they cannot go and enter into the workforce because of the cost of child care and the unaffordability of it. So focusing on those two issues, I think, means something to people, and being able to create some solutions around it and have policy ideas around that, I think, is important. So I think anybody, Jason included, who is focused on issues around affordability and issues around economics is focused on the right thing.
Yeah, and Heath, we know when we talk about the Georgia governor's race, right now President Trump is in a bit of a precarious position between the Epstein files, cost of living questions. What is his impact going to be here in Georgia when we look at the governor's race.
Well, there's one thing we know. In 2025, Trump was a big factor in every race around the country. So the question is, in Georgia, Republicans have a reckoning coming. He is still popular and exceedingly popular with about 30% of the Republican base. However, he is really unpopular with independent, college-educated voters in the suburbs of Atlanta and Savannah. And so the problem that Republicans are going to have in 2026 is he can help you a little bit in the primary, but he is right now harming Republican candidates statewide. We saw a little bit of that in the PSC race just 2 Tuesdays ago, and that's the big reckoning for Republicans coming up in 2026. Can he turn his image around, and is he going to be the influence? We've had 5 statewide races that Republicans have lost in the last 3 election cycles, and he was a big factor in those, and so we have to figure out how to deal with that here in Georgia.
And that's our show. We want to thank our guest, State Senator Sonia Halpern and Heath Garrett and Dr. Ben Taylor.
And as always, thank you to you for watching. We'll see you next Sunday.